Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're doing something a bit different.
Mhm.
We're taking a close look, a deep dive into just one source, an article by Gospel Lakia called Rescue the Perishing.
Yeah.
And since you shared this one with us, we've really tried to pull out the key insights, those essential nuggets, just for you. It presents, a powerful, sometimes pretty challenging view on the Christian call to action.
And we'll be digging into the deep sense of urgency the article talks about.
Right.
Also, the nature of the personal calling it discusses, and the author's take on why this crucial work often seems to remain undone. It's a perspective that definitely doesn't pull any punches.
Okay, let's unpack this then. So the source kicks things off immediately with this incredibly powerful opening image.
Yeah, that anecdote.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The author talks about seeing a book, No Man Cared for My Soul, and feeling like he was just staring right at them, representing, as they put it, millions of invisible faces and voices calling out for help. They describe the feeling as scary yet concerning, even an unavoidable burden. What's the core idea being set up there?
Well, that personal feeling, that unavoidable burden you mentioned, the source frames that as connecting to something bigger.
Okay.
Something it calls a cry in the city. It's the author's way of saying the need isn't just abstract, it's palpable, it's personal.
Right. And then the article lays out what it sees as the non-negotiable mission. It quotes, "Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature."
The Great Commission.
Exactly. But it doesn't just state it. It really emphasizes the urgency by pulling in specific biblical passages.
Yes, passages that paint a pretty stark picture of suffering.
Yeah, like Jeremiah 31.15, Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted. And Lamentations 1.16, "For these things I weep. My children are desolate because the enemy prevailed." The author uses these to really underscore the state of things, the need, from their perspective.
And the source doesn't waste any time making it personal for the reader, for you. Right after setting that scene, it hits you with this direct statement, "It's your call, now make it your mission."
Wow, yeah.
It just immediately places the responsibility squarely on the individual believer's shoulders.
But okay, if the call is so clear and the need is apparently so great, why isn't the work, fully done? This is where the article seems to take a bit of a sharp turn, right?
He does.
Delving into the internal challenges, the reasons within believers for not answering that call.
Yes, it explores this really interesting idea of an inner voice that every believer might experience.
A voice.
Yeah, but the source notes there can be confusion. Is it the voice of destiny, the voice of God, maybe just inner awareness? The author argues that just, hearing a voice isn't actually enough.
Okay, so what is enough then?
There needs to be conviction, the power of a prevailing voice aligning with our being. It's about a deeper resonance, not just hearing something.
That comparison the article makes to young Samuel, that's quite striking, isn't it? How he kept thinking Eli was calling him.
It is. The source flat out suggests believers are like him in many ways.
So we might feel that calling, feel it's close, but we know we're not quite there yet. The author points out this tendency maybe to loiter around our purpose.
Loiter.
Or nap here and there,
Yeah.
Maybe make big splashes once in a while. But despite all that activity, the article insists the work is not done.
It even brings in that really pointed image of Jesus asleep in the boat. Remember that from Mark's gospel?
Oh yeah, during the storm.
Right. And the disciples are freaking out, asking, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" The source seems to use this to imply that believers, similarly, can be asleep or just inactive even when there's spiritual turmoil and need all around.
But what's really insightful, and maybe, like you said, a bit challenging, is what the source says next. It points out that even when believers are awake and active, they might still run in the wrong direction.
Exactly. The article offers this critique, this warning about taking on assignments that aren't actually yours.
Like bearing someone else's cross.
Yeah, bearing the cross for which we are not called to bear. It suggests people get sidetracked, caught up in what looks like someone's call, or maybe following glorified leaders instead of really discerning their own unique assignment.
So the core idea, the nugget here, seems to be that while the big mission is clear, how each person plugs into that is very distinct.
Very distinct. The source is crystal clear. God has a call for everyone. It's unique. It even says it could be the same assignment, but it's still unique.
Right.
And it uses that very blunt phrase, "Mr. Angel Mark," no offense to the Angel Marks, "does this and that. That's his call. Find yours and focus on it."
Huh. Yeah, that's direct. It's a really strong push towards personal responsibility and finding your specific focus.
And the goal, the desired outcome of answering your specific call, according to the source, is living a life where eventually you can stand and say, like the Apostle Paul, I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith.
With that promise of the crown of righteousness.
Exactly. And the article kind of grounds this whole idea, this fulfilling your unique role, with that humbling thought from Luke 17:10. I think it uses the CEV translation.
Yes, it does.
We are merely servants, and we have simply done our duty. So it frames the work not as, achieving personal greatness, but simply doing what's required of you.
Okay, so building on that idea that the work isn't getting done or not enough of it, the source then offers this quite powerful critique of how believers sometimes spend their energy.
It really does. It makes this observation that believers often, quote, crowd into already cultivated areas and turn our faces away from the dirty work.
The dirty work.
Yeah, think of it like maybe lots of people wanting to tend the nice established garden patch, but few willing to go out and clear the thorny wilderness.
Which the source contrasts directly with the mission as it presents it. Search and rescue, not compete.
Exactly. It's about reaching the unreached, the perishing, not just sort of vying for position or recognition within established circles.
And central to actually doing that search and rescue is the directive to focus on our calling, not on what we fancy, desire, or find easy.
Yeah, the source is pretty blunt there. Convenience or personal preference shouldn't be the deciding factor in our service.
Yeah.
And it makes the point that the calling is often very specific, maybe to a people or to a particular sphere,
Right.
and that you're not called to do all the work, but rather to do the work, meaning the work assigned specifically to us. It uses that example from Acts where Paul recounts the Lord telling him.
Oh, yeah. Go. I will send you far away to the Gentiles.
Exactly. Paul's assignment was clear, specific.
So a key takeaway here is that, according to this article, you really need to magnify your specific ministry. Whatever it is, prison outreach, maybe church planting, evangelism, discipleship, you need to see it as God's direct demand for you. It then quotes that well-known verse from Matthew 9:37, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few." But it offers a very specific kind of pointed interpretation of it.
It does. The author interprets lots of people but few laborers by drawing a comparison.
Between who?
Between the Pharisees in Jesus' time, who were certainly believers in their own way, but weren't laboring effectively for God's kingdom, according to Jesus, and the situation in the church today,
Okay.
where the article suggests there are lots of believers, but
Yeah.
again, very few laborers. It poses that really stark question. How can the work be done if we do not labor?
Right. It challenges the idea that just, identifying as a believer is sufficient. Effective labor is required.
And this really brings us to what might be the most profound and maybe the most convicting nugget in the whole source.
Okay.
It argues that the ability to effectively reach others to do that labor requires something really deep internally. It references Romans 10. How can people call or believe or hear unless someone is sent to preach? But here's where the source gets, incredibly profound. It states, we cannot merely share the gospel. We have to feel the doom of humanity without Christ.
Wow. Feel the doom. That's intense language.
It is intense. The author uses that phrase, feel the doom of humanity without Christ, to really push back against any kind of purely intellectual or detached approach to sharing faith.
That's a powerful statement. So the source is directly tying your personal conviction, genuinely feeling the weight of human need, to how effective your work actually is.
Absolutely. It says it very starkly. The gospel that has not moved us cannot move sinners, no matter how hard we labor.
Oof.
It insists we cannot separate our life from our ministry and expect it to prosper. And maybe most directly, there is no shortcut to reaching the lost than intense labor for them.
Intense labor. And the article tries to make that practical, right? By listing examples of what that labor might look like in different roles or gifts.
Yes, exactly. It frames it as everyone needing to play their unique part. Let the preacher preach, the writer write, the encourager encourage, and the singer sing. Everyone must play their part in love.
It feels like it's drawing on that passage in Romans 12 as well.
It does. It brings in further examples of those specific gifts or roles from Romans 12: serving, teaching, encouraging, giving, leadership, showing kindness.
But it's not just having the gift, is it?
No, exactly. The source emphasizes, pulling from Mormons, that these aren't just titles, they're actions to be done with specific attitudes. Do them well, or generously, or seriously, or gladly. It's about the how as much as the what.
Right. So bringing all these different threads together, the urgent need, the internal struggles and distractions, the call to focus specific, intense labor that comes from a deep conviction. The source wraps up with a very direct challenge, doesn't it?
It does. It states it plainly. Now is the time. The Lord waits, not for another voice, but for yours. Will you answer the call?
So we've walked through this article, Rescue the Perishing, exploring the strong sense of an urgent call the author presents,
Mm-hmm.
the internal hurdles they discuss, and that consistent emphasis on focused, intense personal labor that has to flow from a genuine sense of the need in the world, according to this perspective.
And perhaps the final thought for you, the listener, as you consider the insights from this source you shared, maybe the core challenge to grapple with is that feeling the author describes.
That feeling, the doom.
Yeah, that feeling the doom of humanity without Christ. And then connecting that feeling, if it resonates, to identifying your unique field of calling. Is it serving, teaching, writing, encouraging, something else entirely from those examples the source gives?
Yeah.
The article asks very directly, will you answer the call? How does that question really land when you think about finding and embracing that specific, unique assignment the source insists God has for you? What does doing your bit of the work, as the article puts it, truly look like in your life based on the principles laid out in this powerful source? That's really the question the source leaves hanging in the air.